Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you believe it's July already? Gosh, 4th of July is going to pass us by if it hasn't already by the time this is released. I just really appreciate my sponsors, Keto Mojo, keto-mojo.com. They are my choice for ketones and glucose monitoring. It's a great double check for continuous glucose monitors, which I highly recommend, but also following those ketones. So when we have those little barbecues, we could see if we're staying on track or whether we were as good as we thought we were. So Keto Mojo. And also I would highly recommend going to their website. They have tons of recipe, fitness tips, so much that can help you stay on your journey. Just great information, great lectures. It's all there. They put it all in one spot. So it's a great resource for my patients, and I highly recommend it. Also, Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com. They're doing great work, and they also just came out with a berberine that I really like that has turmeric with it, some anti-inflammatories, helps with sugar control, and helps with the gut microbiome. There's so many benefits that we've been talking about on this podcast with a lot of the experts. So go grab some, and remember, Met Health is our discount code, METHEALTH. And that will help you stay on track and get ready for the holidays and enjoy the rest of your summer. But thanks for tuning in. And I just want to greatly thank my sponsors for keeping this podcast going and for helping bring us some great content. Hello, and welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast and Life's Best Medicine podcast. I am super excited about this one. I was like, oh my gosh, Tro and I were on the low carb cruise, and I'm like, Who's Jessyca Reynolds? I don't know her. Do you know her, Tro? No, I don't think I know her either. And then we heard her talking. We're both like, oh my gosh, we got to get her on. So unfortunately, Tro's tied up saving the world right now. So I get all the pleasure to myself. Jessyca, welcome. Jessyca Reynolds, Coach Jessyca, welcome.
Thank you for having me on. I'm thrilled.
It's so exciting. So it sounds like you took a little sabbatical. Tell people your story. Like, how did you start doing low carb lifestyle training for people? Because you have a story that's ridiculous. Ridiculously amazing, I'll put it that way.
Well, I was a mess. I can't tell everything, but I can tell you that my life had gotten to a place that I just never imagined that it could be. I was very sick. I was on 17 medications every day. I was severely obese. I had high blood pressure. I had been diagnosed with bipolar, depression, anxiety, OCD. I had agoraphobia. Some people don't know what that is. I like to say it because it's such a big deal. I couldn't leave the house. 5 months went by and I never stepped outside to feel the sun on my face. I had bladder disease, chronic migraine, kidney stones. I was a disaster. And I had done carb in the past. And I was in a place where it's not the same thing as being suicidal, but I just felt like my best years were behind me. And I was in a place where I was so far gone that I couldn't recover from it. And so I was in a bad place. And I was having these episodes where I would just kind of black out. And it was a little bit scary. And my husband, I wouldn't go to the doctor because I knew they would just be like, well, you need to lose weight. And I had struggled with anorexia, bulimia since I was 11 years old. and had food issues before that. But what brought me to keto was my husband basically forced me to go to the drugstore at least where they have the cuff and do my blood pressure. And I saw the numbers flash on the screen that said, I think it said something like extreme risk for stroke or heart attack. My future flashed in front of my eyes, not my past, not my life, but my potential future flashed in front of my eyes. It was like a whole future movie played. I saw my older daughter getting married, and in that vision of her, I was at her wedding in a wheelchair. My face was mis. I had a stroke. There's something profound happened to me in that moment. I had this revelation of if I don't change. I pictured my younger daughter graduating from high school and the chair was empty. I was dead. I wasn't there. And all these things happened in like a moment. And all of a sudden I realized I did not want to die. I desperately wanted to live.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah.
And would be better off if I died because I was such a burden to them. I believed that. And I mean, that could be a whole story in itself, how I got to that point, but that's where I was. But I suddenly realized I wanted to live. And I had done low carb in the past, like back in the late 90s, and been really successful. And what I remembered about low carb was you could eat a lot of food and still lose weight. And I thought, there is no way I can do a diet. Like I cannot, I can't count anything. I did every diet. I did all the weight loss drugs. Again, there's nothing I didn't do.
The
You
cabbage
name
diet,
it,
the
I did it.
grapefruit diet, like all those kind of crazy, like all those things that I did too.
All the
Melba
things.
toast.
And even at my head, still binged and purged, but it did not make me skinny. And so, anyway, I just remembered I could eat a lot and weight. So that's that we were going to do low carb. And it was a really small group, like a couple thousand people, but there were people in there talking about things that were different besides just weight loss. Like somebody was on there saying, they reversed their diabetes. And I was like, people looked younger in their pictures than in their before pictures. And most of the time, things that I had done to lose weight, they made me look, I had lost lots of weight before, but I looked old. I didn't look healthy. I'm like, there's something different about this thing. So I wasn't doing it well. My first low carb meal was 3-piece chicken nuggets from Filet because I knew they had 1 gram each. But I didn't know anything about inflammation, about that wheat wasn't a good thing. I didn't know the difference in keto and low carb. I didn't know healthy. And so I did it my way and picking up information from this a little bit, just, a little bit at a time. And I was shifting things, changing things as I learned. But about 2 months in, something happened. I lost the urge to purge. Now, I had done that since I was 11. At that time, I was 1. And so I had to figure out what was different about what I was doing than what I had done in the past, because I had never, ever gone for like 2 months and not binged and purged. And so I started to study, and there were not a lot of books out at that time. That was early February 2016, and there were not a lot of books about keto or anything. But I read what I could. I read Wheat Belly. I read the Obesity Code. Because I wanted to know why this was different. Why was I feeling better? I was thinking differently. And so then I just became a student of it. I went down every rabbit hole I could find. I became a certified holistic nutritionist. I did a bunch of different just certification courses and stuff just because I wanted to learn for my own self. And of course, in the process of getting better, feeling better, people are starting to notice and they're asking me for help all the time. They're like, something's different about Jessyca. Now, they didn't take me seriously at first because people followed me when I told them to juice fast. I was into it. I did a 60-day juice fast and people followed me and people went out and bought expensive juicers because they saw me doing well with that. I did a 60-day juice fast. I lost 60 pounds, but within 3 months, I had gained back 70. And
Wow.
so they didn't take me seriously at first, but they saw me changing and they were interested. But I started giving out advice. I mean, my inbox was flooded. People were calling me. And the people who ran that page, which was quickly growing, it was like a growth spurt for keto. They were like, hey, you're always answering people's questions. We have a coaching program. Do you think you want to work with us? And I was like, I don't think I can. I haven't lost all the weight yet. I was down like 75 or 80 pounds, but I had a lot more to lose. I wound up losing 152. So I felt like I wasn't ready. But one of the things I learned was you should do it when you have the open door to do it. I cannot tell you all the people I would have missed out on working with who have these amazing stories now if I had waited till I lost all the weight. And so I just want to encourage people wherever they are on this journey, if you have started to feel better and people are noticing, don't hold back because you're not all the way at the end yet. Because honestly, none of us are all the way at the end. So I started. I finally said, all right, I'll do it. And it was crazy successful. I prayed. I said, God, I am not one of those people that is a big social media person. I am not going to hunt down clients. If you want me to be successful, you have to bring them to me. The very first week, 13 people signed up with me.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's
It
amazing
was
because
more than anybody else had. It was so wild. And I was like, okay, God, I hear you. And then I wound up, I've done that ever since. So I started coaching in December of 2016, and I still do it today. So a really long time I've been doing that, and I'm just so incredibly grateful. We were talking about faith a little bit before you started recording. It is just like God to take the thing that the enemy tried to destroy you with and turn it into a testimony that saves other people. And I can't even tell you, like, that's everything.
yeah, you get an amen with that. I mean, that's how I feel too. It's like, okay, I'm not perfect. I'm not Sean Baker. I'm not like this, like six pack ab guy. And you go, God, why are you calling me to do this? This is kind of crazy, right? Because I'm on the journey still too. And I think a lot of us need people who are still on the journey because they get it. If you have some, six pack ab guy who never struggled with weight, what do they really know about
Right?
struggling with obesity and diabetes and, metabolic disease? So someone like you who's come that way, I mean, how many people can say they've lost? You probably lost over the years how many pounds, like, losing 60 pounds and gaining
At
back
least
70.
1,000. Well, I lost 100 pounds at least 5 times.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
I
It's
think I think
amazing.
altogether, at least 1,000 pounds is what I lost over the
So you're an
years.
expert on weight loss and weight gain. So you go, okay, what do you think? Like, because this is an important topic that we don't talk about enough. What do you think was that thing when you lose 60 pounds? What happened that next day when you go, you know what, and you gain that 70 pounds? Was it that you restricted your body too much? These strongholds you're talking about? Like what was that defining thing that made you gain the weight back? Because clearly, what I'm getting at is clearly, if you could lose 60 pounds or 100 pounds all these 5 times in your life, you go, you have willpower, you have strength, you could do these things. Like, what happens at that point where we
Yeah.
go, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done with this thing?
Well, it's not a lack of willpower, clearly. People think that when someone's overweight, they must not have willpower. I have tremendous willpower. If you can do a 60-day juice fast, then you have tremendous willpower. So that's not the issue. I think the issue is anytime you're doing something that you can't keep on doing, there's a high likelihood that you're going to return back to your previous state. And the other piece of that too is there is no diet that will absolutely fix you. You have to figure out your behaviors too. You have to figure out, and for me, there was emotional and compulsive eating. And, that's something that people don't talk about. They talk, people treated me for anorexia, they treated me for bulimia, but, I could binge eat cucumbers. I was a vegetarian for 14 years. Again, I think that was a part of that disordered mindset, but I mean, I could binge eat anything. It didn't have to be delicious, it didn't have to be carby. So for me, when I stopped juice fasting, and the minute I picked up anything to eat, that compulsion turned back on, and I just reverted back to that old behavior. Because as far as I was concerned, And I talked about this on the cruise a little bit. That was my identity. This is who I am. This is just what I do. And you will always return back to what you truly believe you are, which is the problem with constantly saying, I'm an addict, I'm an addict, I'm an addict, because my default behavior is going to be addictive behavior. And that's a problem. You're never going to be really, truly free if that's the route you take. And I get that that's probably not a popular thing to say.
No, I think it's true. I think so many of us have a victim mentality. It's like, oh, I hear it all the time. Like someone, I'll say, why are you struggling? Why are your sugars through the roof? Well, because my husband brought home cookies. I'm like, okay, did he force you to eat them? Like, you start getting to the bottom of it. It's like you really wanted to have the cookies. You didn't stop him, or you don't talk to him, or I'm just lazy. I just procrastinate. I can't prepare meals because I'm too busy, and I can't work out because I'm too tired, or it's too hot, or it's too cold, or something else. There's something in the air. There might be a solar flare or something like that. I mean, we have so many excuses, so many, like we just say, that's the way I am. I'm just lazy. That's the way I am. Right. And we accept
It
those
lets you
strongholds.
off the hook. Yeah.
It's an
I
excuse,
find those
right?
they're surface excuses though. So when someone says something like that to me, I always dig a whole lot deeper. And at the bottom of all that stuff, because that is surface stuff, there is something else that you're getting out of the behavior. It's easy to blame someone else. It's easier to blame the time of day, the situation, the food that's in front of you. But the reality is, if you didn't believe if you didn't deeply believe there's something that you were getting out of eating those cookies, you wouldn't eat them. And that's the problem. I talked about strongholds, this idea of strongholds. And a stronghold is a lie, a deceptive thought that has been planted, and at some point in your life, you believed it as true. And over time, you confirm that lie over and over again. I use the example of, you're a little kid, you fall down, you scrape your knee, and somebody you love hands you a cookie and you feel better. So that little lie, the seed gets planted in your mind that eating a cookie takes away my pain. I then feel pain and I immediately go for the cookie. It makes me feel better. And that little seed that was planted grows, and it's a little stalk. And then every time you repeat that, it turns into this great, big, strong, huge thing. And so you find people and they're like, oh, it's because my husband brought cookies home. And the real answer is, I was feeling stressed out all day. And when I saw those cookies, I have learned and I deeply believe that cookies fix my stress.
Amazing. And that's such an amazing thing that we all need to listen to, because we have to think about, like, why did I eat that? And so I think analyzing and saying, okay, why did I blow it yesterday? Why was it that I ate the cookies? Are you a bad person because you ate the cookies? No. Does it mean that you're weak and tired? So I think you have to look at these things. And I think these strongholds that we believe, like, oh, I've gained my weight back every time, so I'm going to do that again. Or, I just can't work out like other people. I don't have the capacity to do that. And we just tell ourselves that all the time. And then once people, like, all the time, I have people that say, I can never skip a meal or I'll die. And then 2 weeks in, they say, I didn't eat lunch yesterday. I wasn't really hungry. And I felt fine.
Right.
But once they do it once, I go,
Right.
oh, I could do that again. That wasn't a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes we have to
Yeah.
challenge ourselves in these things.
Well, the thing about too, I think this is really important, that the difference saying and understanding that all these lies are strongholds, whether it's emotional eating, compulsive eating, being attached to the scale, how you feel about your body, your self-worth, all these things, you can have many. They are things that are attached to you. And it's an opposite message than this is just who I am and I was born this way. And I used to teach that. I did for a very long time. I taught, you know what, we're just wired a little bit differently when it comes to food. And that felt good to me. And it felt good to others, and it was well received. But if it's who I am and I was born this way, there's nothing I can really ever do about it except manage it. When you really understand that there was an inception to this thing, a lie began and it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, and I believed it was true my whole life, but it never was. That means it can be chopped off, it can be rooted up, and I can be free. I don't have to manage it. I can actually be free of it. And that is what is such a big deal. That's the message that I want to get across, is that there is no stronghold, none. I don't care what it is, that cannot be rooted up, because it's not actually who you are. It's just something that's attached to you.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. That's I was thinking. As a matter of fact, I had a hypnotist on, and I was go, this to me is hocus pocus. It's weird. Like they'll explain this to me, and I said, "Can you hypnotize anyone?" He said, "No, some people can't be hypnotized." And why not? Well, because ultimately, if you come to me and say, "Brian, I really want to quit eating donuts," and you really don't think donuts are bad for you, but everyone thinks you should quit, hypnotism doesn't help you. But if you go, it's bad for me, I know it's bad for me, but it has a stronghold on me, it has this thing where I just can't break from that, right? But it's bad for you, then hypnotism can help you. So he made the example of, he was watching they were doing one of those comedy shows where they hypnotize you to act like a duck or react. So there's
Mm-hmm.
one lady who was hypnotized, and he said, when your husband comes out, you're going to remember every bad thing he's ever said to you, and you're going to cuss him up and down like a sailor. And so she the husband comes out, and all of a sudden she gets bright red, hot, sweating, upset, agitated, but she doesn't say a word. And so after he went and asked her, he said, how come you didn't cuss when your husband? She said, I don't cuss. So basically you can't hypnotize to do something where they know it's not them. You can't make them walk
Right,
naked down the street if that's not them, right? So we all
right.
worry about these things, but I think there's so much of that in these strongholds where we believe these things so profoundly. Like, I can't live without soda, right?
Right.
You just believe that. And you go, I just, that's one thing I'll never give. Or sourdough bread, I would have said, I can't give up sourdough bread. Everything else I can do, but not that. And then you have these strongholds that we just hold on to.
Well, the thing about a stronghold is, and you always have to go back to this, it was never true. No matter how true you believe it is, and no matter how many examples you can give in your life that seem to bear out or prove that it's true, it still never was. It started with a lie. And just because just because I believe something for 41 years did not mean that's who I was. And now I turned 50 in 2 weeks. So I have a much shorter time being free than I was a slave to the strongholds. But that revelation of true freedom, I don't have to manage symptoms. I don't have to keep dealing with the same thing. I don't have to get up and have a war every day. And the other piece to this, and it's so important because you can't talk about strongholds without talking about how do we tear down strongholds. Authority is what tears down strongholds. Authority. Actually, the Bible says that, right? We have the authority to tear down strongholds. It's in the word. And how do we use authority? We use authority by our spoken word. When we speak the truth, it's like taking an axe and chopping at that thing that's attached to you, and it gets weaker every time you speak it. Every time you speak it, that thing gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and it has less of a hold on you. And of course, you can do the work to go and root it up by figuring out where did this thing start. But speaking the truth over the lies is how we use authority. I talk about the enemy a lot, and I do believe we have an enemy. It's the enemy of our purpose. It's the enemy of who we're supposed to come. It's the enemy who comes to kill, steal, and destroy. It is. And how does he mess with us? He grabs a hold of those strongholds, things that are can easily pull to destruction, and he grabs hold of those things, and he pulls at it by whispering lies to us. And the enemy is sneaky. He speaks to us in a voice. So you might think you had a conversation in your head with yourself, and you talked yourself into doing that destructive thing, when in fact have had a conversation with the enemy and you have gotten bamboozled. Um, and so in every battle, because that is a battle in your mind, in every battle there's high ground, and the person that has the high ground wins. In your head, the enemy has the high ground, because you will get exhausted of thinking back at the enemy. The enemy never gets exhausted of saying those lies to you. You get exhausted of fighting that. But the moment you open your mouth and speak out loud, you win. You get the high ground. The truth rings in our ears. When we hear the truth, there's something that rings true about that, and it overcomes anything that's in your head. When you hear yourself say the truth, you know it. Even if you don't even if you haven't believed it for a very long time. I use the example of this guy I was working with who would leave work and he would binge eat in his car. And I was trying to figure out what are his feelings that are causing him to eat. Like what happened at work that stressed you out, that pointed you towards food.
Mhm.
And it was a moment that I had this revelation that sometimes eating episodes like that are not related to feelings or emotions. They are not emotional eating, they're compulsive. Compulsive eating is related to your senses. It's being in a place, it's seeing a thing, smelling a thing, it's familiarity. And for him, we figured out just that act of getting in his car would trigger getting in his car alone, because secret eating is part of that whole disordered behavior. Just the act of getting in his car triggered him to do that compulsive behavior of driving to Wendy's and getting food and binge eating by himself. And so I had him start to speak out loud every day over himself as he's walking out of his job. I never eat my car. I don't eat my car. I never eat my car. He's doing this before he ever had success, but he's saying it because I asked him to, and he trusted me. And I don't eat my car. I don't do it. The whole way home, I'm driving. I don't eat my car. I never eat in my car. And he's hearing himself say it, and it got him through. It got him through. And it happened. His wife got in the car with him. She's like, go to whatever and grab some food. He's like, I don't eat in my car. It became his automatic response because he heard himself say it many times. And that's how you compulsive situations.
Yeah,
So
and
we
also
believe.
the opposite is true. If you say I'm just weak, I'm just weak, I'm just weak, and you keep telling
Right.
yourself that, then you're
Yeah.
weak because you can't fathom that you're not weak. You've told yourself that, and it's amazing. As a matter of fact, that hypnotist along those lines, one lady said, I have such trouble after I eat dinner, I start craving food all night. I just can't. I just crave, like, I want to have chocolate, I want to have cookie, I want to have something after dinner. And he said, well, try this tonight after you're done eating. As soon as you're done eating, put down your fork and say, I'm done eating for the night. I'm not going to eat until tomorrow after 11. She said, just try it. And she said, I met with her a couple weeks later. She goes, Doc, I have not had a snack after dinner since I put my spoon down and say, okay, I'm done for the night. Because the other thing is like, oh, I'll just have this. And then it's like, oh, I need something. I need something. I need something. Instead of saying, no, I'm not having it till tomorrow.
That's a really common compulsive thing. Remember, I said compulsion has to do time of day. Or it has to do with it doesn't have to do with feelings. It has to do with your environment. So right at eat, a lot of people are like, I have something sweet to end my dinner, because you've done that over again. But what absolutely is evident, it works when you speak out. You believe the words you hear yourself say. And if you say, when I'm with my clients, when things like, I always, and fill in the blank, I always go for 14, eat well, and on day 15, I'm like, we'll always keep doing it. You are calling that into existence. You are speaking that over yourself. And I to just slightly their words and say, in the past, I have struggled after days, but I don't do that anymore. And I can't number of times during my own that that urge, that enemy voice is who you are. Like you are, you've done this your whole life. It's who you are. And I would say, I don't do that anymore. There was a lot of speaking out loud in my own healing journey. I don't do that. I just don't, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing how that power and the power of the mind, like we're talking about, is, as a matter of fact, this just happened to me the other day. I'm expecting we're gonna go home and eat an early dinner, and then we're going out for a hike with my daughter. And then I get home and my wife said, there's a change of plan. We're not gonna eat right now. We're gonna eat like in an hour. We're gonna go out and meet her there. When she gets off where she's gonna meet us, I brought the dinner. We're gonna eat it there. I was like, but I'm hungry right now because that's my expectation. But if I knew we were gonna, I wouldn't be hungry. So it's amazing when you
Right.
have these expectations that, oh, I'm going to be craving that, or I'm going to whatever. Then or that trigger. I've had a hard day. I deserve to have something right now.
Well, that's an enemy. There's certain words, you're talking to the enemy. And you deserve is one of those big ones. But what I is when you understand, I think I shared this on the one of the things I said he speaks to you in voice. So you think you're having these thoughts negotiating, I'm just going to take them or whatever. When it's and he's engaging you in this thought conversation, he usually says you tends to accuse. So he says, you should take the night off. You deserve a little treat. You worked hard. So quickly figure that out, start to speak out loud and shut it down. But the other thing I learned is when the enemy says you deserve a treat, you can use very words yourself. Like, I deserve to be healthy. Use that word and use the same word that you hear the enemy and you speak it out opposite. What do you really deserve? Because he's saying you treat, but we both know it is not to wake up feeling swollen and bad and disgusted with yourself. That's not a treat.
Yeah, and those mental struggles that we go through. Should I have one cookie or two cookies? Well, don't have any cookies. You don't have to worry about it anymore. When people like, if I'm fasting and I know I'm fasting, super easy. They could be eating anything like donuts. And like when we were on the cruise in the morning, I'd go down to get coffee and I'd see people eating 4 or 5 donuts, just sitting there eating donuts, like not even thinking about it, And you go, oh my gosh, it's like, it's such a stronghold. And they remember, oh, when we won the games, I got donuts, or when school was over, we went and got donuts. And as a matter of fact, during COVID, a lot of my patients, and this bore out in the media and stuff, is that a lot of people were eating their favorite cereal that they ate when they were 9 years old, because they remember watching cartoons and life was easy and they have no stress, and they associate that. They think if they eat their cookies, now all the stress goes away, or there's their special cereal, then everything gets better, right?
That's a perfect example, right, of a stronghold. There's a rooted lie. Cereal is attached to easy times or peace or less stress. And it's when things get tough, I think if you're not very aware of yourself and you haven't worked through this, I don't care who you are, you will revert back to what you deep down believe. And even if it's childhood stuff, um, I think I had more clients than I had ever had come to me who were struggling with their eating during lockdown. For me, my life didn't change that much. I work at home. So, but there were so many people too that weren't used to having access to food all day. They didn't even have home office. They were just suddenly working at home. They're working in their kitchen. And so if there's a tiny root of that, maybe they didn't struggle with food before, but way back they did learn when they're stressed, eat. And then they had constant access to it. And they were like, people were gaining weight. They didn't understand why all of a sudden they had this crazy food behavior that they really hadn't struggled up until that point. It's this old lie that about what food can do for you that it could never do, but really did believe it deep down.
Yeah, it's the same thing like with kids now. It's like they think, oh, I have to drink this sugary energy drink so that I can go exercise for 20 minutes, or I can go play basketball. And we believe that with carb loading to go for a jog or something like that. You start realizing you really don't, like, if you understand the physiology, I don't need it anymore. Now, how much of it's psychological, and breaking these strongholds. And I think part of what you're saying too is like, if you can name these strongholds and go, look, this is not true. Right. If someone
But
says, Brian, you're stupid, and I was like, well, I went through med school and I kind of can reason things out pretty fairly. Like, it's not true what you're saying, so I'm not going to let that bother me. That's your opinion, but I don't agree with you.
well, that's not really encourage people. Not everybody needs to study nutrition, but I think I encourage people to learn because when I talk about speaking the truth, sometimes it's saying, actually, I mean, if you think I'm stupid, you're wrong because I know what my IQ is. I'm not stupid. In your case, became a I couldn't really be stupid. That you have all these things true, but you can speak nutritional truths too. And so the more that helped me a lot because for someone who had done all these diets and things, studying and learning the truth of carbohydrates and I was born in the early 70s and so I grew up in the 80s when fat was vilified. It was a huge leap of faith for me to start eating fat. And so it took studying and understanding why what I had believed, what I grew up believing wasn't true. It took that kind of knowledge in order for me to take that leap of faith and eat the fat. Because I mean, I remember Susan Powter, she had whole big audiences chanting, the fat makes you fat, the fat makes you fat, and everybody
Totally
believed it.
remember
And
that.
I'm
Totally
like,
remember that.
so that was a stronghold. It was a lie that I believed. But studying and understanding insulin and how fat does not affect insulin, and that it really wasn't about calories, that allowed me to experiment with fat. And I talk about all the mental health issues that I struggled with. I mean, I was diagnosed with bipolar at age 14. I grew up eating vegetarian, low fat stuff that was high in soy because I was vegetarian. I mean, now I know all the reasons, all the things I did that made it worse. But I never, ever in my life until I was 41 ate fat. I mean, not without all the carbs, but I never ever ate like healthy fat. I would never have imagined that was part of the answer. But it's what my brain needed. It was exactly what my brain needed. I needed to eat fat in my food. So I had to overcome that stronghold that fat makes you fat in order to have a brain. And
Yeah.
that's a good example of like sometimes studying out and challenging what you've been told. And even if it's, speaking truth out loud, even if it's scientific truth, it works. It really had to say that. I'm like, this is not going to it's not affecting my insulin, storing fat right now because I'm eating, some butter, and it works. It truly does work.
Yeah. So what are some tricks you've learned like to deal with these strongholds? What like like you said, calling it out vocally, even saying, "Hey, look, I'm not gonna let you get to me this time. I'm not this or I'm not." So, like, what are the practical approaches? So, for as an example, someone gets off work today and they had a hard day and the boss was a jerk to him. They go, "I need a glass of wine to calm my nerves. I'm like stressed out. It's Friday night. I worked hard all week." What would you tell that person who's kind of struggling with alcohol or trying to get off it?
Most people, a large percentage of people I work with have a secondary issue, or sometimes it's the first issue. Food becomes more of an issue to start to deal with alcohol. That, interestingly enough, the third thing often is shopping or overspending. It's fascinating. Alcohol, or sometimes drugs and alcohol, but alcohol, food, and then overspending is these three major strongholds that I see. And people will, there's one, they're being good, they say, with alcohol, and all of a sudden food is, it's like they're just going between these things. So they're not really dealing with it. They're just moving on to something else. So for a person, this is, I think you said something about naming strongholds. That's literally what I have people do. You cannot say the right words until you first know what the lie is that you need to speak back against. And you can't identify the lies until you identify the strongholds. So I actually do an exercise where I have people got a little head, it's got these little branches. I have them write on there, what are my strongholds? And then once they can name what their strongholds are, alcohol being one of them, what are the specific lies that cause you to drink? So when you compromise, when you say, I'm not drinking, and then you compromise and do drink, what is the lie that you believe? And I have them write them out. So you actually said it was a hard day at work and alcohol soothes me. That's a lie. So I have them write out the specific lies, because you can't speak truth back to a lie that you don't recognize as a lie. So first you have to know it's a stronghold. Second, you have to identify the specific lies. And then you have to say, well, what is the truth? If that is a lie, what is the truth? And be prepared, because it tends to go in cycles. Like a lot of people get, I call it weekend mentality. All week long, they make good choices, and then all of a sudden the weekend comes. So the neat thing about that is the enemy is not creative. He is not a creator. He imitates, right? He does not
Deceives,
create, he
imitates.
imitates. Yes. So he has he just repeats the same thing over and over. And as long as it works on you, he's going to keep doing it. So if every Friday night he uses the same lie, you should have a drink, you worked hard all week, you deserve this, you can expect come Friday night, that's what you're going to hear. And so it's identifying the pattern too, when not just, it's not like all day long I'm waiting for the enemy to show up and I'm ready for a battle, but he works in very obvious, clear patterns. I can fully expect he's going to continue to do what he's always done. And when it comes, I'm going to know the words to say because I've talked about it and I've practiced it ahead of time.
Yeah, so you're ready for it and you're not just like
Yeah.
dumbfounded, right? And
Well,
I think
once you know, he uses the same lies. And here's the crazy thing. Some people are like, Jessica, I don't know about this whole enemy thing. I don't even know if you're right. I don't know if you're crazy. And I'm like, well, let me tell you, let's do an experiment. Let me name some lies. Let me name some things that you have had. The enemy says the same thing to me that he says to you. He's not creative. There's nothing new. I've never heard a new lie. Never. Like I've never heard anything creative. No one's ever come to me and say, oh, the enemy said this to me. I'm like, guess what? I can predict for you exactly what all the enemy's lies are. There's nothing new. He just recycles them and he says the same thing to you and me. And since you and I can't possibly have the same thoughts, it has to be an external source. And that's proof of the fact that there is an enemy and it is an external source. It's not in me. And I've done this in large groups of people and written out like lies. And people are like, yep, yep, yep. And so in a group of 50 people, if all 50 people say, yes, I've had this same, the same argument in my mind, the same lie I've been hearing over and over, it can't be yours. It has to be an external source that is coming to you. And that's why you can believe that there is an enemy. There is. It's not you.
yeah, and then you take away the strength. It's just like anything. If we have a secret we don't share for our whole life and it's burning in your heart the whole time, sharing
Right.
then you're free of it now. You go, okay, now people know that I have this struggle, whatever it is, right? And so
Yes.
so then it loses power over you. So many people they lose their ability to really address what's going. Like you said, it's not really the cookies. It could be that you're not happy with your marriage, or it could be that
Or the
you're
cookies.
not happy with your job, or you're going through a midlife crisis. All these things that we just don't say that's why. And we don't question enough. And a lot of times the other thing that comes with that is the guilt of saying, I had a cookie yesterday and I feel like a jerk. I shouldn't have had that. I'm a bad person because I had a cookie. And you go, well, that's the enemy too, breaking you down, making you think like, I'm not gonna do this anymore because I'm too weak to do it. You believe these lies again.
If I can get a time spiritual and I think this will with you and I hope someone else. Condemnation always from the enemy. First, he gets you into doing a thing, and then he keeps you from doing it. Okay, so when you feel condemnation, it is always 100% of the time from the enemy. First talks you into doing it, and then heaps nation on you for doing it. And so that's the enemy. The voice of truth, which is God, the Holy Spirit, gently nudge towards making the right decision. That is a huge difference. Conviction from condemnation. People come to me and they start speaking, tell if they are feeling condemned. And I'm like, that's the enemy there. And I'll actually walk backwards through it. So first of all, he talked to you, you should take the night off, and you come into agreement with him. Yes, I should take the night off, and you do. And then he heaps all this judgment on you for doing what he got you to do. That's how he works. It is. And so again, knowing who you're dealing with, you're not fighting your own battle. You're not fighting yourself. Part of the reason I almost lost it is because I thought I can live constantly fighting myself. Like I literally thought this divided person. Part of me wants to be well, keep going to hospitals and I keep doing, and the other part of me just wants to destroy myself. But that was a lie. Never me fighting me. I did not understand my feelings. But once you have all the authority, and the enemy cannot have your authority. He has none. No, if I have all authority, and I do, the enemy none. The only way he gets it is hand it over to him. And we do that because the enemy will say, well, I will give you, if I'll give you I'll give you a big one. The biggest lie I ever believed was this: if you just stop fighting this thing, Jessyca, the reason that you are so messed up is because you're always fighting, you're always dieting, you're always going to eating disorder hospitals. If you just give in and say, this is who I am, then you will have peace. That sounded very true to me. But that was the enemy handing me the offer of peace in exchange for my authority. The authority was mine. It was, I just didn't know about it. But the lie there was what the reason, and I fell for that, is without opposition, he takes over, and it happens so fast. You'll recognize yourself. And it happened without the opposition. I thought it was fighting. I thought life was hard when I was fighting and when I was, seeking help and doing all these things. But life really becomes hard when there's no opposition. You're not fighting the enemy at all. He just takes over, become unrecognizable in a very short period of time.
So well, we know that from a spiritual perspective too, right? Like when you're dangerous to the enemy, that's when you get under attack and you go through these hardships and all these crazy things happen. And then, when you're no threat to him, he doesn't care. You're just going to live your life and party and don't think about life or what matters. Then you're easy. Exactly, that's easy.
Exactly.
We don't need to mess with you, right? Make you challenge to see what you really believe.
Well, just to tag on to that too, and this is an important note: enemy does not have unlimited resources. Like I guess I need to do it in a way that makes sense. There is an enemy who can kill, steal, and destroy. He doesn't have unlimited resources. He can pick on the whole world. He can't. He picks and chooses who to mess with. And so if he's picking you to mess with, it's because there is potential and there is purpose in you that he never wants to see come to pass. And so it's tough. Some people might be like, I don't want it for purpose if the enemy's going to mess with me, but it's always worth it to overcome, to stand up in your authority and become what you were called to be,
Yeah, that's a huge thing. And when you take that power away, that power of fear. As a matter of fact, when I was in Guatemala a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go speak in a place that was MS-13, right? And I was like, everyone's like, can't go to MS-13 area, but I happened to know the pastor. He was under the protection of the drug lord there. So the drug lord says, hey, as long as you're not messing with my gang, you guys are doing your own thing, you can do whatever you want. But it was a death sentence for anyone who touched the pastor, anyone who was under his care, right? So I go, okay, I'm pretty much protected. Then if you believe in God, you say, well, if I'm under the protection of God, he's a lot more powerful than all these drug lords and all the pastors and all these other people. You start realizing you can walk in authority and not be, like eating after the pigs, basically, right? He's giving you
we walk in authority. You wake up and you have it. It is a gift that has been given to us. All authority has been given to us. You don't have to fight the enemy for it and take it from him. He only has it if you give it away. And here's the neatest thing. If, let's just say, you got caught off track, you listened to the enemy, you came into agreement with him, you handed over your authority, when you wake up the next day, your authority's back. You have new authority. And all you have to do is stand up today. You can recover immediately. You don't have to wrestle it back. And I think that's the whole reason we have sleep and we wake up and we have new days, because we have new grace every morning. But we wake up with new authority and a new opportunity not to hand it over. And I think that is amazing, because it doesn't matter what I did yesterday.
Doesn't matter how many times
it doesn't matter what I did for 41 years. Today, I don't have to do that anymore because I have today's authority.
Yeah, and you walk in authority and you have a new day, a new dawn every day, and you get ready to go again. You go, okay, today I'm going to do better than yesterday. And we learn and move forward, right? Not say, yes, I blew it yesterday, so I'm going to blow it today. Today's going to be a terrible day. A lot of people wake up that way, by the way, right? Those of us with faith wake up and go, okay, God, what's on the plan for today? But a lot of people wake up and go, oh, no, it's going to be one of those days again, and people are going to be mean to me. And so many of those things, you speak those into being also, like, some people just have that mindset where wherever they go, there's conflict. Like I think I mentioned in my talk on the cruise was, so many people go on Twitter every day just to fight, to argue with people, to say what you're saying is wrong, what you did great, you lost 150 pounds, you're going to gain it all back, so you're wasting everyone's, those kind of people. But that's all they know. They don't know how to encourage, go, wow, that's great, Jessyca. That's really great news, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're not happy. They want to bring you down. And I think the enemy just wants to bring you down. I think until we come to terms with that, we're going to
Well,
struggle.
the understanding too that the enemy uses people to hurt us, to affect us, to discourage us. Really important in life. There's a phrase I like to say: never, ever, ever put a face on the enemy. Don't put a face on evil. Put a face on the enemy. If someone is opposing you, a person is that the enemy is using. It's not what they were created for. And so when you think of like it actually makes me feel for them, and I have compassion because I'm sure the enemy has used me to hurt them, and I'm grateful that he can't do that anymore. So take that face off of evil, or you take that face off of the person who's opposing you and say, that's the enemy speaking through them. You don't take it personally. You know how to fight that. I just think that's really important that it helps you with relationships. It helps you with people who are treating you wrongly and unfairly. You're like, wait a minute, this is not them. This is not who they are.
Yeah.
They're being used. And that's a
Yeah.
really bad thing when you have opened yourself up and are allowing yourself to be used by the enemy.
Yeah, or getting upset because someone makes a bad comment about you on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it
Right.
is. It's like when you go, look, I'm not going to raise my cortisol and get into an argument with someone that you're not going to convince those people. You can try to help them.
No.
I want to help you. If you don't want to listen, that's okay. You could go struggle and suffer. But it is a when you go through life like that, it's kind of a hard thing. And I think you're bringing up so many important topics. That's why I was so excited to have you on, because we believe these childhood things. Someone when we were 9 years old said you're going to be a loser, you're never going to make it. And the more times you say, hey, I've been, and when we reflect, and I think one of the things that came up over and over again was having gratitude, counting your blessings, being positive, thinking positive. Because I'll tell you, if I meet with someone the first time, they're like, I can't have cookies, I can't have bread, I can't have, soda, I can't, like, other people are like, I can have meat and I can have vegetables and I can have this. And oh my gosh, this is great. Like, this is easy.
Right.
I was eating Melba toast for 2 years. That's how I felt when I first saw Jason Fung. I'm like,
Good
I could
old
eat those
rice, good
things.
old rice cakes.
Rice cakes with a little peanut butter or Melba toast, or like, yeah, I would just have rice all the time
Hummus.
when I went out because I
Yeah.
knew it was healthy. I go, oh my gosh, what did that do to my sugars? That
Right.
was totally self-defeating, right? So all those things. So yeah, I think just
Right.
looking at the live, but I'll tell you, people, if you're being blackmailed, you go through, what's happening with a lot of kids right now is they'll say, hey, send me a naked picture of you. And then all of a sudden they're stuck in this, a terrible
Oh, yeah.
relationship because someone has something over you. And so many people, we live our lives in a way where people have stuff over us, right? So you like to live your life where no one, like, you live a just life and a good life. And I'm an open book. Okay, here's my story. Like, once you let that go, and just like anything, if you think you're weak and tired, even admitting, as guys are not good at that, saying, hey, I struggle. Like,
Right.
I go into my car and eat after, or I go to the movies and eat popcorn by myself, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Once you verbalize that, it loses strength over you, because then people know it's not a dark secret anymore.
Well, it's shame. There's so much shame attached to that secret eating. There is so much shame attached to it. And when you tell someone who's safe, or you tell other people who are saying, yeah, I do that too, shame just disappears. I like to say it's like shining a bright light on dark, ugly things. Darkness has to flee. And so shame disappears in those safe places. And that's why it's so important to have community, and not just any community. Someone who will speak life into you, someone who will help you figure truth. There's lots and lots of coaches, and I am not a person for every person. There's a very specific person who needs me, but people say, well, my coach she's so nice, but I'll say, I really screwed up yesterday, and they'll be, hey, just start again today. There has to be a balance of let's look at it. There's no shame in it. It's food, right? There's nothing to be ashamed of. But let's back and see. Let's back and see what happened before date, and let's work through. You can't you can't ignore that it happens. It looking at something, digging into it very gently to figure out what up to the event is not condemning. I think, we're talking shame. Shame always comes from the enemy. Um, if you just say, well, that's okay, start over tomorrow, and you don't dig into it, you're going to keep doing the same thing. And
Yeah,
ultimately, there's no accountability there either.
if you're golfing and you hit terrible and you keep doing the same thing and you don't go, okay, what am I doing wrong? You could practice the rest of your life and you're never going to get better. So we have to have that in our walk. I think it's really important that we have friends in our life who go, hey Brian, you know when you said that? Do you have a minute? I want to talk to you about how you and your first instinct is be defensive. Go, here's why I said that, and they go, look, in love, like tell the truth with love. We were told, right? So maybe you could have worded it this way, or having these people guide us. And that's what we have coaches for, to say, okay, you're doing great, but you're holding the club wrong and you're never going to get better. Like it's out of love saying I want you to get better. I'm trying to help you here. Right.
Yeah, if you come from a place of love, doctor, as a coach, as a like from a place of love, and you tell some truth, um, even if it's tough for them to hear, truth always, there's something in a person's spirit that's up, and even if it's here, they ultimately it might take a while for them to process. I love cheering people on, but cannot just be a you have to do the deeper things. You have to dig into places that are really uncomfortable, especially if you're trying to uproot a stronghold. Because the authority means I'm speaking out loud. I'm speaking out loud. I'm chopping that thing off. I'm chopping it off. But you can, we talked about the three different strongholds that most people have, like alcohol, food, overspending, or shopping. And if you have been chopping at this one and you're better, and you take your eye off of it and you start to deal with this one, that thing can grow back. And there is a great importance of really uprooting it all the way. Like you feel better. You have a certain level of freedom when you have spoken the truth often enough that it's broken off. But it's not the same level of real total healing, total freedom from the thing as when you go ahead and dig, and digging hurts. It reminds you of painful things. And I just, again, for me, I feel like that's what I'm called to do. It's the food is like 1%. All of this is like 99%,
Yeah, you go
Um,
back to childhood trauma, stuff people said, things that have been stuck in your brain and you believe it and you got to break down and go, okay, people have said that, it's not true. And here's why, and here's what I've done. Just like if I say you can't run a mile in this time and then you beat that time, you go, look, I did it. Now you say, maybe I could get a little faster. So I've had some people say, well, I can't get below this weight. Then they crush that and get way below that, or their sugars get way better. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And they go, oh, I can do it. Jessyca did it. Why can't I do it? That's why we need the example. And the other thing you said that's so critical in anything, religion, you know, whatever it is community. Like I have community
yeah.
groups every 2 weeks I just had it the other night and someone will come in and go, I didn't want to come tonight. I've been blowing it. And someone goes, oh my gosh, 2 weeks ago, that's where I was. Here's what I did. Oh my gosh. And then they know they're not the only ones struggling because we're so, we think that we're the only ones who have to change our diet or exercise more. Nothing's fair. How come everyone else is doing so much better when you realize other people are struggling too? It makes it better. It makes it like we're in this battle together and not just that we've all arrived. Like no one in church is perfect. I can guarantee that. I've never met the perfect person yet, right? Including
Right.
myself. It's hard to say that, but it's true. And you realize, hey, I got work to do because arrogance is like you think you've arrived and everything. If you say I've controlled my eating, everything's fine because I lost 60 pounds doing juicing, and then you gain back 70 pounds, you're like, what happened? I was so confident a
Yeah.
month ago, and now what happened?
Yeah. Well, the enemy loves to isolate us, because if he can get you alone and believe that he'll try to make you think you are worse than anyone else, that your situation is a special case, and that might have worked for this person, but it won't work for you. And so if he can keep you isolated, then you can't get well. And so because you truly will start to believe, yes, I understand that person did it, that person did it. I've heard the stories, I've listened to the podcast, I've seen the pictures, but my situation is special and it's worse. And I believed that. I did. I was like, yeah, but nobody's ever been this bad. I was like, I am the worst person there ever is. I really thought that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm the sickest person there ever is. I'm the most mentally ill person there ever is. I believed that. And I don't know where I was on that chart of how sick I was compared to others, but it didn't matter. The truth is, healing was always available to me. But as long as I was still speaking that and believing that, because I was isolated, extremely isolated, then that lie held me captive, you know?
Well, and they say the truth will set you free, right? Like we say that, but do we believe that? Do we really say, hey, the truth will set you free?
I've got a lesson on that. So I teach my group, right? The truth will set you free. So I can hear the truth and I'm like, picture like a bird in it, right? So truth is like someone coming and opening that door. I've been set free. But as that little bird, I can stay on my perch and not fly out. So the truth will set me free. It opens the door to being free, but I have to take an action and actually fly out the door. So I think it's I think there's a huge difference in being set free and being made free. You are made free when you actually take the steps, when you actually walk it out, because you can hear it. You can, like, people listen to me and they're like, that's true, because the truth, I don't care who you are. When you hear it, you know it, and something in you, hope springs up. But if you don't take action, I can open the door and you're perched on that little, but I've always done it this way and I've never done that. And I've never spoken out loud, and that's weird. And I don't like the sound of my own voice. You can just, this is where I've always been. You can hear the truth. You're still going to be exactly where you are. So the door is open. You hear the message of truth. What are you going to do with that truth in your life today to actually
Yeah.
be made free?
And that's so important. And then there was actually, when you were talking, I was thinking of an experiment with dogs, and they would put a dog in a cage. On one side would shock them all the time. They would jump to the other side to get away from the shock. You know, it has to do with trauma and abuse. And so what the dog would jump to the other side of the cage to get away. But sooner or later, they starts getting shocked on this side. Then ultimately it just gets shocked no matter what it does. So it keeps jumping back and forth. Then it realizes nothing I can do, and lays down in the cage. And when
Right.
people open up the door to let the dog out, it would just lay there. The people
Yeah.
had to go in and take the dog out and go, look, you can get out of here. Like they just thought they couldn't escape this anymore. So people in a bad marriage or life stress and all these kind of things, you just lay down and go, okay, I'm done. Or
Yes.
I'm never going to lose weight. I'm just going to just eat everything and not
Yeah.
even try anymore because it hasn't worked in the past. So breaking free of these things is such a huge, huge topic. So I'm
and
excited.
believing and believing that you can be fully free. You do not have to wake up every single day and fight this thing the rest of your life. If I thought that I had to do that, and that's the addiction model, right? I have to constantly go to meetings. I have to constantly show up and tell everybody that I'm an addict because I live in fear that if I don't do those things, I'm going to relapse. That is not the message that I'm putting out there. The message I'm saying is you can be truly free. You don't have to fight the rest of your life because the idea of that is exhausting. And a lot of people give up because even after they've done it for you see stories being sober from alcohol, say for then something happens. Extreme stress causes people to revert back to old methods, even though they've learned better. But they really got free. They were managing it. And I'm pulling people up to a high level of freedom than just managing illness.
You can put medicine out of business. Yeah, but that's so true. I mean, really, we can't just manage and put a band-aid on it, like you said. It's so important. Like, there's so many, like, I don't want to say theoretical, but so many principles that are so important. For instance, if you, as this happened to a friend of mine, he was changing his Christmas lights. One of the lights bulb and the broke, and the a shard of glass went to his fingertip. And for a year, it hurt him and bugged him. And he told his doctor, "This is bugging me. I'm not going. That would be malpractice. To go there and dig in your finger looking for some glass. I don't even know if it's there." So a year and a half later, it worked its way out, and he finally had. But if he would have just went in there and cleaned it out first, even though it was going to hurt, he wouldn't have suffered for a year and a half. And
Right.
eventually, the truth comes, right? And that it gets revealed, and your body will heal at some point. Like if you let allow your body to heal and take away all the bad stuff. And I think the other thing you said that was important too is so many of us think it's not going to work for me, it's not going to happen, and we believe these things so much. And other people think I could eat cookies and donuts and drink Coke all day and I'm not going to get diabetes. Like, okay, you're living in wishful thinking, right? And it may be, but you're not
Still
helping your odds at all.
right. Well, this people are deceived. There's levels of deception. And you see a person who maybe they think they're getting away with a thing because they have the same consequences that I have. Maybe you don't obese or mentally ill inside your body, something happening. So the deception is still there. Just it affects people in different. It's almost worse for that person who doesn't have that strong thing. Sometimes I've seen people who maintained healthy eating all the weight for years, and they become deceived that that now they can eat these things and not have any negative side effects. And what happens is for a little bit, because their body is healed, they're metabolically flexible now, right? They fix their insulin problems. They start to eat these things and they're like, look, this is sweet. But that never fixed the problem. They have it, they've incorporated it, and then I've seen them completely go backwards. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, I've actually seen people that were coaches in the community who believe strongly, like in the lifestyle. I've seen them go backwards. And that's what it is. It's because they don't have immediate consequences because they've healed their body. But something's always happening when you do something that's harmful for your body. You can see it immediately or not. You have started something, a metabolic process or a mental process or spiritual process, if you're doing something you believe in your heart is wrong. So I think it's all in whatever situation, it's about deception.
Yeah, and I think it's patience and perseverance and keep playing because sometimes you go, I've been working out, I've done all this stuff, I only lost 1 pound and I've been doing all this stuff and I gave up all my favorite things and we get so defeated so quickly. So going, okay, you're physiologically changing, you're putting on muscle mass, you're losing fat mass. So I've seen people not lose like several people on the speaking on the cruise said, they're the same weight they were before they start, and you see them and go, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. But they
Yeah.
put on a ton of muscle mass and lost fat mass, and they're a lot healthier. So all those things we can do and get away with it. So I've been eating during Thanksgiving. I didn't gain any weight, so I could keep doing that. Then all of a sudden, January 1st, you're like, what happened? How did I gain 15 pounds? Like, how did that happen? Right? It happens so quick.
I feel prompted to say this, but anyone who's listening to this, I speak about about the enemy and how he works. If we focus too on the enemy, it gives him glory. And I don't want to do that. So I think this is really important. Not only bring him up so you know who you're dealing with. Like I only bring him up so you understand, one, he's a liar. He operates by pulling on those strongholds, those lies. Believe. He whispers always lies. He can only never true. But here's the thing. Every act where you actually do the thing that you didn't, every act of sabotage, he starts with you coming into agreement with the enemy. So he will give you a thought, and you have that thought in your mind. You either say, yes, I agree, or you say, I come out of agreement with that, and you speak the truth. So he has no power to make you do anything. And I think that's what I'm trying to get across here is that I don't want to glorify him. He has no power over you. He can only plant a thought. It takes your agreement with that thought in order for it to become an act. And that's huge because that gives you all the power, all the authority. I have to come into agreement with thought because that's his only weapon. It's the only thing he can do. And so if I refuse every thought, I never have to sabotage myself. That's a powerful place to be.
Yeah, walking in the power. That is such a huge thing. I mean, there's so many, like people go back and listen to this a few times. There's so much wisdom and so much great stuff here that will help you in the hard times when you think, oh, I'm a failure. I can never do this. I can, getting out of that and being your own cheerleader, like none of us would talk to another person, a friend of ours. You go, you blew it. You're a loser. You would say, oh my gosh, you had a hard day, but you'll do better tomorrow. But to ourselves, like most of the time we're saying, gosh, you can't do this. This is too far. It's too high. It's too hard. Everyone's going to think you're a loser if you're not eating cookies with them. All these things, these lies that we believe, and you go, okay. Because so many times I've seen that where you don't eat what everyone else is eating, and no one cares. They're like, "Oh, good, there's more pizza for me. Good, go and eat your
Yeah.
salad or do whatever you're doing, right? Have your steak instead." So like, there's so much of that. So I have to ask you, Coach Jessyca, what is your like? What's life's best medicine for you? Like, where do you go when things are hard? People are being mean to you. When what keeps you motivated to keep going forward and doing things like this, doing podcasts when you could be hanging out with your family?
A couple things. I have the last season of my life, the last 2.5 years, I have gone through the most difficult, hard things I've ever experienced in my life. And that's because I told you a little bit of my story before. But the last years have been the hardest, the absolute hardest season of my life. And one of the things that I've learned, this is how you know you're truly healed. You don't go back and do what you used to do. And I have learned this, that the truth, when you are truly healed, you go back because you're literally transformed. You're not who you were. And I think that's a pretty neat thing to understand in the midst of all kinds of like pain and turmoil and change and stuff like that, that I am so transformed that it would never cross my mind to go back because I'm truly a different and new creation. And so I think that's important. But and I'm going to say this, and some people don't want to hear it, but it's the truth. I just lay everything down at the feet of Jesus and I say, I want to do whatever it is that you want me to do. I don't care what the cost is. Whatever you are calling me to is what I'm willing to do. You have my yes. And so, therefore, when an opportunity comes along to speak, even though I have not stood in front of people and spoken in so many years, like the low carb cruise, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this thing. He says, you told me yes. I'm calling you to this, and let's do it. So, obedience sees me in the midst of any circumstance. And what you learn in those fires is that you truly are a transformation. And that's amazing. That's miraculous.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing and sharing your heart and these important things because not everyone's going to be an audience for this. I get that. I started the Life's Best Medicine podcast because so many people that we had on the podcast said faith helped them get through. It's like, okay, if that's a tool I can use, let them use. Don't say that doesn't work or you're wrong or it's like allow people. If even if we're in a fantasy world, let us believe it if it makes our life better. You can believe what you want if you think talking to your mouse here it helps you, then okay, if it helps you, okay, I'm fine with that, right? But I think
That's the thing. Speaking
go.
out loud works. You don't have to believe in why. You don't have to understand or know why. It still works. And whatever your faith is, when you speak the truth, it works for everybody. It's universal, regardless of where you are in your faith journey.
Yeah, and I think that's so critical. Be yourself. Don't worry about it, what everyone thinks. And I know for me, like praying in public was like, oh my gosh, let's do it real quick before the waiter comes or something like that. And it's so many of these things where we're afraid of what people think. And at some point, you go, like you said, it's what God thinks. If God gives us a platform or gives us that, He's opened doors that I look at and go, how in the heck did that happen? How am I having lunch with Ben Bickman? How am I like sitting with
Yes.
Jason Fung and hanging out? Like it's crazy, like stuff I would never think about. I've met all my heroes, and including you now. I get you on here and stuff. So yeah, it's just amazing how you just so many of us feel like we're like what you were saying at the very beginning, and it's that expression God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called, right? So we don't have all the tools, but I'll give you the tools. You step out and you do your thing, and I'll give you the tools, and I'll help you learn and help you be a better speaker, a better coach, or better husband or wife or whatever it is. But you got to step out in faith at some point.
He gives you the boldness to do what you are called to do. So think about me. I was for about 5 years agoraphobic, wouldn't even walk outside the door. I mean, honestly, I was so afraid that a neighbor would see me. I mean, I could not do that too. I'm standing in front of people, encouraging them and speaking truth. And I mean, that is it's a miracle. There's no other word for it really, except for that it's a miracle.
Yeah, and people see that miracle in you, and I think Tro, me, everyone, when we talked about the speakers, everyone said, Jessyca, you set the tone for the entire. And I was unfortunate enough that have to be after you and stand up and try to match you. But the point is, like, we were talking about the same things over and over. Like, we saw that trend. None of us knew what anyone else was talking about. And
Right.
a lot of people say, man, that was like a God thing, because all of us were saying the same things that no one talks about.
I could not believe that she assigned me to be first on the first day. And I just kind of almost like kicked and screamed in myself, like, how could she do that to me? But it was divinely ordered. It was supposed to be that way. And it flowed exactly like it was supposed to. That was literally, it wasn't, I talk about divine appointments. They're very specific. He's like, I want you on the cruise ship with this group of people speaking at this time in this position. And I know what I'm doing. So just do it. And I'm like, that's right. You have my yes. And so despite my own, potential fears about stepping back in and speaking again and, wondering how my message would be received and why am I first, all those things, it was divinely, it truly, truly was. And what an amazing experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, anyone, if you could go, like, go. Yeah, go. I mean, it's so great. I mean, it's such a great experience and just meeting people and talking to people. But I'll tell you another little miracle just for people listening too is we're there. My wife, her dad and his brother, they were in separate states their entire life. So he was in California, his brother was in Texas. So their grandma died about a month ago, and my wife, who hadn't met her cousins in 35, 40 years, went back, and they had a great time and they connected, and it was such a beautiful thing. And then we're on the cruise and we leave out of Florida, of course, and we're there and we went to one of the shows one night I didn't even want to go to, and I go, okay, I'll go. And then we're leaving and someone goes, hey, Linnell. And she turned around, it was her cousin that she had seen for all these years. So they
Oh my
reconnected. We got to spend
goodness.
time with his family and his kids, and we're like, wow, that's such a what's the odds of that? You know how big that ship is with thousands of people, 3,000, 4,000 people. And you go, what's the odds of if they hadn't have gone to the funeral a month ago, they never would have met. They would have walked right by each other, not even knowing each other, right? It's just crazy, and they have such a connection. He's going to come out and visit us, and
Wow.
it's just amazing. But like you said, you have these divine appointments. So someone listening here is going to be inspired, and they're going to go help their community and reach out. And that's how it is. And what you're talking about, it's hard to talk about faith. It's hard to talk about strongholds and all these topics, but it was so well received on the cruise, and it touched so many people. Like almost every single person I talked to goes, oh yeah, Jessyca was awesome. I go, how about me? No, Jessyca was really good.
Wow. Well, I got to point to him because, I didn't write anything down. Just let him speak through. And somebody was like, what did you say? I'm like, I don't even remember.
Yeah, I've
So
had times like that.
I
Like, what did you? I
wait
don't
to
even know.
listen to it.
I hope I didn't say
I'm
anything
like,
bad.
I don't what I said.
Oh, so Jessyca, if people want, they need a coach, they want you to help them. How do they track you down? How do they find you?
My email is coachjessica at gmail.com. I do a group. I'm actually getting ready to launch a 8-week program on breaking strongholds. I'm working on that in July. Um, I'm working on a book. I've never written a book before. I'm scared to death, and it's the next thing that I believe God has called me to do, and I need a lot of help. It's a complete question mark unknown. I doubt my ability, but I will be writing a book about breaking strongholds too. So it'll reach more people that way. That's what I feel like he's told me. So, but
Amazing.
coachjessica.com or email me and I'll always get back to people.
Yeah, and we'll have links in the show notes. And just it's Jessyca, so you're not going crazy trying to find her like I did. So yeah, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll get these out as soon as possible to help some people.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.